for today. Gabby, would you make your way up here? This morning we have, give her a huge hand. This morning, like on every fifth Sunday, we're going to do something called the empty chair. Now, the symbol of the empty chair is that the chair that we sit in was empty before we got there, right? And so we want to pray that the Lord would fill every empty chair in the house. And one of the ways that the Lord does that is by us sharing our testimony. We overcome the enemy by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And guys, I got to tell you, Gabby's got a story. And so I'm going to sit down with her and interview her a little bit today. You guys are going to get to watch and be a part of this. Now, we're going to be pressing for time today because you're not going to want this story to end, because it is a story of God's grace, mercy, and power. Amen? Amen. Give her another hand this morning. All right. Are you ready?
I think so.
Okay. Yep. You just flip that on right there in front. You just slide it up. Perfect.
Hi. Okay. Hi.
So the good thing is you're not nervous.
Not at all.
No, not at all. So when we sat down this week to kind of talk a little bit about this, the theme that we discovered for your story is survivor.
Yes.
You are a survivor. You're not a victim.
No.
Because being a victim causes us to kind of shut down and not move forward. But you're a survivor. You're someone who has overcome by the strength and power of Jesus.
I am.
So let's talk a little bit about childhood. I mean, just starting right out of the gate, you had some pretty huge things to survive and to overcome. Why don't you share a little bit about that?
So I'll start by saying that I, as Pastor said, I feel like I'm a survivor of many things. I don't use the word victim because I'm not. I'm blessed. The experiences that have happened to me happened, and I'm here by the grace of God. My story started. My parents are both deceased now, but both grew up in the Catholic Church, Italian Catholic, and I want to give respect to my parents, but my mother had a lot of mental health issues. My mother was an alcoholic, and my father was a drug addict and a drug dealer, musician, and a lot of times drugs come along with that lifestyle. Yeah. So my parents married. My mother became pregnant with my sister, and their parents kind of forced them to get married. They pretty much separated. He traveled a lot for music, and my mother was on her own with my older sister. She then became pregnant with me, and my parents divorced 2 months after I was born. So my mother was primarily on her own. She did her best, throughout my whole childhood. She did her best. I know she did. She sought out the Lord. She tried to introduce him in our lives by going to Catholic church, and as things progressed over the years, my mother became involved with another musician who was also a drug addict and an alcoholic, and was very, very violent, very abusive to us. I spent a lot of time my mother did her best to protect us, but often it was, by protecting us, it was God bringing people into our lives to raise us, to step in as informal foster families. I've said this in my Connect group before, but I felt like I've never not known the Lord. He's always been present in my life. So even when we were in the throes of violence, I somehow knew I could close my eyes and pray and know that it would be okay. I remember having dreams as a child as well that were where it sounds a little off, but that demonic spirits would come to me in my dreams, and being so little, I remember having that strength of Christ in me to speak to them in my dream and say, I'm going to pray, I'm going to close my eyes, and when I open them, you'll be gone. And so I always had that sense of he was near, he was with me.
Yeah. And you needed that because
needed it,
you went
yeah.
through all kinds of abuse as a child.
Yeah. There was, mental and physical and sexual, which is difficult to talk about. But, through it all, I always felt his presence. I remember one time when I was 8 years old, we were being threatened. My stepfather had threatened that if we were home when he returned, that he was going to kill us all. And so I remember I was probably around 8 years old. My sister would have been 10. And I remember my mother, her and I, huddling together on our bed and praying, and just, we didn't know we were going to see her again. We didn't know where we were going. We just knew that we needed to be out of there before he came. And we were sitting on the bed, kind of in a triangle. It was my mother, my sister, and myself. And even though I knew that Christ was with me, he was always with me, in that moment, and I will say this is probably the only time in my life that I ever questioned where was he. And I just remember saying to my mother, if he is here, I want to see him. I want to feel him. I want to know that he's real. I want to know that he is with us. And my mother said, basically, no, thank you. My sister, the same. But I really, in my heart, wanted proof. I wanted to see and feel his presence. And so my mother said, where two or more are gathered in prayer, there he is. And we prayed. And in that moment, I looked up. It still makes me emotional, so I apologize. In that moment, I looked up in the doorway, and I saw the most beautiful bright light. It was the outline of what I feel was Jesus, the outline of a man, just the most glorious light. I can even see it in my mind now. In difficult times, I can close my eyes and know that he is here with me. I see him, I feel him. I still have that vision that came to me. I couldn't speak. All I could do was point to my mother and sister and say, look, he's here. Neither of them wanted to see him, as you may recall I said. And when they looked up, he disappeared. And that is when I could fully speak again and say, he came. My prayers were answered. And they didn't see him. And so I looked up, they looked back up at me, and I looked up again, and there was that beautiful light again. And so, again, lost my ability to speak, and tears flowing, and from that point on in my life, I've never questioned, and so many more bad things have happened. I can't go into every detail, but I can tell you that he is with us, and I know I'm not the only one who's lived the things that I have. I know there are many of you out there that have lived just atrocities as well that he would not want to happen to us, but because we live in Satan's playground, things will happen to us. But what I can tell you, he will take that and he will use that for good. My life is a testimony to that. I remember when I was in my teens, I remember one of my mother's friends spoke over me and said, one day you're going to speak before people. And I thought to myself, okay, crazy lady. I do not like to be in front of people. I don't like to be the center. I just thought, okay, and I put that kind of to the side. Well, years later, some events took place in my life, and I began to speak out for survivors, domestic violence, sexual assault. And I never really thought that I could do this. I never thought that it would be something that I would be, interested in. It just never occurred to me that I would ever do that. But, as life would have it, things happened. And I came in contact with a group at Family Resources and sought out advocacy. And once they started learning me and learning my story, I began volunteering for them and actually speaking to the law enforcement community about what it is to be a survivor. And again, not something I ever thought I could do. I guess it's my whole point of when I do, I've been invited to trainings, to do trainings for law enforcement. My whole point is to bring back in what a survivor is, you know, to bring the humanity back to what it is to be a survivor, and to help them when they're questioning, you know, folks that might have been harmed in that way in the field. And, you know, my heart has always been in sharing my story only on the onesies. You know, God has put people in front of me. That's something else that He's blessed me with. It's a burden, but it's a blessing at once, where, you know, I've been able to, you know, I'll walk past someone and see a look in their eyes, and I know what I'm supposed to pray for. I know I can see pain, or I know they're in a dangerous situation, and He gives me these little messages, and it's how I know to pray for people.
Well, and like you said, you know, you've walked through so many different things.
Yeah.
You know, when you were 9 or 10 years old, you got into some behavior that would probably shock people for a normal 9 or 10-year-old. What happened to you?
So, as life would have it, I was introduced to drugs at the age of 10 years old. I always, I don't know, I was always the older kid's pet, so to speak, and so they always wanted to include me in on things, and drugs was one of them. So my first time smoking pot was 10. My first time falling down drunk, I was 12. But, you know, through my childhood, I think I was seeking out kind of respite from the pain of the things that had happened to me. And so I used, you know, drugs and alcohol. I knew the Lord through this whole time. I knew that there were going to be quiet times because I knew that I was disappointing Him. But it's what I did, probably like many others out there. You're wanting to heal the pain. You're wanting to numb things, stomp it down a little bit, you know. And so I did that, and it escalated. And my father, who left at 2 months old, came back into my life when I was around 12. When I did that, or when we were reintroduced, he was, you know, still a drug addict, and I guess maybe wanted to be the cool dad, I don't know. But because he had access to different kinds of drugs, I started being introduced to other types of illegal substances. And, you know, one of his rules was, you know, when I would go out, you know, don't get pregnant, don't get arrested, and if you do, don't call me. You know, he just didn't know how to be a dad. You know, I'm sure in some form, in some way, he loved me. Both of my parents did, but with their mental health and their addiction problems, it was a struggle, you know, to know how to parent properly. But I can tell you that each time I feel like experiences that I had, you know, where I felt like, okay, I'm on the cusp of dying here with some of these drugs, you know, it was a lesson to me, okay, stop doing that one. It was like a warning, God, you know, using it or allowing me to come to that place to go, okay, I'm not doing that again. I can tell you that the last time I touched any illegal substance, I was 17 years old, and I had been emancipated. I had, you know, worked through lots of challenges, but I had been emancipated, and God had put me in the home of my aunt, and I was finishing high school. I was on a good path. She had kind of stepped in and shown me, you know, okay, you can go to college, and we had applied for scholarships, and my life was moving in a positive direction. She was a good role model. And I was at a New Year's Eve party, and I hadn't really touched anything in quite some time, but I was like, it's New Year's Eve, somebody offered me some cocaine, and, it's not something that I hadn't done in 14, 15, 16, but I had stopped most everything, and I was offered, the substance, and I was like, oh, it's, one last time. And I remember within the hour, I was in this house, hanging out the second-story window, just vomiting, and felt my heart was going to explode. I felt my body dying, and in that moment, I cried out and said, Lord, I am so sorry. I don't want to be found like this. I know you've brought me this far. I know you've brought me this far, and I'm meant for more. I've always known that I was meant for more because he instilled that in me. And I just prayed, I will never touch another substance again. I will never do this because I want my life to be a testimony to what you can get through. Sorry.
It's okay.
I just wanted to be different. I wanted to help others. I wanted to be a testimony to others. And, prayed in that moment, Lord, if you let me live, I'll never do this again. And from that moment, I lived. Obviously, here I am, crying in front of you. I've been able to keep that promise to him. I've not touched, I don't do anything excess. I don't even drink. I stopped from that moment on. I knew I was meant for more. And I really feel like all of these challenges that I've had has helped me know how to pray for people because I've experienced it. The things that I've experienced are probably very much like a lot of you. It's just a lot of them happen to me.
Yeah.
I often feel like if I wrote a book detailing, it would be really hard to believe, but God.
So from that point forward, you did start living more focused.
Yeah.
You went to college and
I
you
did.
got a degree, and you
Yeah.
even had your own business, and you were
Yeah.
working a ton of hours, and I'm not sure where that's coming from. But in the midst of this, you started raising your niece and nephew.
Yeah.
So you had a niece and nephew that you were raising, and you were working like 90 hours a week, literally 90 hours a week, 2 different jobs.
Yeah.
And so in the midst of all of this craziness, somebody came into your life.
Mm-hmm.
Your ex-husband, yeah. Why
Yeah.
don't you talk a little bit about that period?
So my older sister, I often have felt throughout my life that I was my older sister's mother, my sister's kids' other mother, and my mother's mother. And so I had started a business, and I was working nights and moving my life along, and my sister was not living well. At the time, she had 3 children, and her life was a mess of drugs and alcohol and people that should probably not be around children. And I would take her kids overnight, and when I really couldn't take it anymore, I went to her and I said, have your children packed up. I think I was 25 at the time. Have the kids packed up with their clothes. I'll be there to get them in the morning. Don't argue. It's better this way than me to involve law enforcement. And so I did. The next morning I went and I picked up her kids, and I had her sign a document that gave me temporary custody. And I said, now go get your life together so that you can mother these children. And so I was taking care of a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I had a business during the day, and I bartended at night in the Quad Cities. So I had a whole schedule down. I was determined I'm going to raise these kids until she gets her life together, and I had it all set up. I would, go to my business during the day, pick up the kids from school, bring them to the store. We'd do homework. I'd take them home. I'd feed them, bathe them, get ready for school in the morning. Hired a high school girl to come over and spend the night while I went and bartended until 3 in the morning, came home, got up with the kids at 6, 7, got them ready for school. It was, we had a system kind of down. And I was not wanting to be involved with anybody. I was raising kids. And, and then I met my ex-husband, who was in professional sports. He was a hockey player, and I was not interested. I knew all of the local team, and they knew she's not playing. I just was not interested, but he pursued me, and I explained I can't really do this right now. I'm raising kids, and this is just the way it is, and but he, included the kids and seemed to be, in it with me to raise those children as well. We stayed together. We end up, the children, my sister got herself together, and the children did eventually go back to her. And then hold the mic closer. Okay. Okay, sorry. And so we were together for about 17 years before we divorced. Our spiritual walks were not the same. We were not equally yoked, and as hard as I tried, the marriage just did not work out.
Well, you had some pretty amazingly difficult obstacles that came up in your life in the midst of that.
Mm-hmm. About my brain tumor.
Mm-hmm.
So shortly after my children, my daughter was maybe 2, I started having some visual problems and had some just headaches and things that just were not right. I would fall down, which I still do. I would fall down a lot, but it turns out that the tumor was causing, at the time they called them simple partial seizures, and it was actually my eye doctor that I went for an appointment, and he asked me, are you clumsy? Do you have these, anything abnormal? And I said, well, yeah, but that's just me. And turns out I had a meningioma in just the right spot that caused some disturbances and what I was having when I fall down and stuff are seizures. And so I went through loads of medication that just did not work for me, bad reactions, and at that time it was just really too much for my ex-husband, and I'm sure he did his best, but it was just me on my own with my children, and still taking care of my sisters. By that time she had 5 kids, so often I had those kids too. Mm-hmm. And so it was challenging, but God was in the middle of it all. It came to a point where the doctors told me, you're just kind of too young to be going through all these problems, and the decision was made to remove the brain tumor. Mm-hmm. And so that was done, and I had to kind of rehabilitate from that. I didn't realize, because of the location, my walking and talking was affected. My memory, I still have challenges. I have some memory deficits, but I found ways to work through that.
You said it took you about a year to learn how to walk and talk again.
Yeah, it took me about a year. I remember I knew I had to get better. My ex-husband was, as I had mentioned, really was not, I was broken now. I was not who he married anymore, and I knew that I was truly on my own, and I needed to get better. I had these kids to take care of, mine plus my sister's kids, and so I just became even more determined, and I would pray, and I would walk around in the front yard in the grass because I was sure to fall down. It was exhausting, but I just became very determined, I suppose, and went through the process of healing and learning to laugh at myself because I say the wrong things, and the kids taking the kids through the journey, and me saying, go brush your feet, and my brain was saying, I thought my brain was saying, go brush your teeth, but I was saying, brush your feet, and the kids learned to kind of laugh at those things too, and so, I just learned to have a sense of humor about my deficits, I guess. Still a hot mess, but look, I haven't said anything wrong yet.
No, you're doing good. We just haven't told you. I mean,
you know what? I'm so fine if you want to laugh in front of me or behind me. I'm good.
So, despite all of those things, you find yourself in a pretty different place in life now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the last couple of years, things have gotten better in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit.
So after I divorced, I'm telling you, I was done. I was not doing that again. I was going to finish raising my kids, now teenagers, and then go volunteer more, hug some babies in different countries. I was done. I was okay, I got this. And then God said, lady, why don't you let me take the wheel on this, because, as a now as older single lady, I did try dating, and that was just I was okay, yeah, no, this is not happening. And then comes along a Paul Monzoni, I call him. Paulie Monzoni. I always tell him, you'd be a good Italian if we could just change your name a little bit. It's Paul Monzon, but I get stuck in my head. I call him Paulie Monzano. Sounds better. Monzoni, Monzano, I don't know. So anyway, I was working, and I received this alert on my phone, and it's somebody that says Corps of Engineers. At the time, I worked for a civilian army, in human resources, and USACE, headquarters USACE is my customer, and I see a message pop up, and it says USACE, and I was like, could one of my customers be reaching out to me on social media? I don't know. So I went to read it, and then I got so mad because I was like, this is not a dating, what? Wait. So I just got really nasty, and I was like, I am at work, and I thought you were our customer, and don't reach out to me, and I get paid to do a job, And then God, and then I was like, goodbye, And then all day, God was kind of on my heart saying, hey, ma'am, that wasn't really who you are. You're not this nasty thing, And so I reached back and I said, listen, I'm so sorry. I am not dating. I will be your friend. I'm sorry. It's just a thing. I'm sorry. And then he, kept, I'm like, okay, we'll be friends, And so that we developed a friendship on social media, and it turns out we both, kind of worked for the Corps of Engineers, and now I'm married to him. But I guess, it's, that's a God thing.
Yeah, you guys have been married a little over a year.
Yeah, over a year now. Yeah,
That's
together
awesome.
for 3 years. He just keeps me laughing, yeah.
So obviously we didn't have opportunity to go into everything, because you never can go into everything. But Gabby, you're a survivor of abuse, terrific abuse.
Yeah.
Really a survivor of parents who, like you said, probably meant for the best, but just weren't capable of being parents.
Yeah.
Exposed to all kinds of difficult things at such a very, very, very young age.
Yeah.
And then really just on your own from the time you were a teenager, trying to make it happen, and then got into a marriage relationship, more abandonment, more abuse.
Yes.
A tumor on top of everything, trying to take care of all these kids, trying to take care of everybody else. So through all of those things, though, I think one of the things that people misunderstand is that even in the midst of life, even in the midst of bad choices, even in the midst of other people's bad choices, we can still maintain a relationship with Jesus, and we can still know that he is there. So what would you say to somebody who would say, Gabby, I have been through a lot of the same things, but I just don't know about God. I just don't know about Jesus. How could he be real? How could he actually love me? What would you say to that person?
I would say, though he doesn't want these things to happen to us, he will use them for good like he has for me. He'll use them in interactions with people. Somebody might mention something to you. You can talk about how God has helped you, how he's helped you through it. I certainly try to do that. I try to be obedient to God when he put someone in front of me to show the love of Christ, because Christ showed me that same love. You know I'm forgiven. I know I'm washed clean. I know that all of these experiences will be used for good. They will be. You know, I once, you know, I took a class, I think it was sociology or something, and the professor had asked, you know, asking what our mark would be on the world. And I just said, you know, I just want to do good. I want to help others. And, you know, I felt like she had poo-pooed me, like I thought I was this grandiose thing, and it's not that. You know, in that moment, I thought, I'm going to make an impact each time I have an encounter with someone, and I'm going to share my story, and I'm going to share that Jesus has helped me through it. You know, I never thought I had, you know, like an official testimony to be able to quote scripture and these flowery, beautiful things. I'm not good at that, but I am good at sharing what the Lord has done for me. I've forgiven so many, you know, I've forgiven and I've survived, and I've been able to use the parts of my story to help others. And I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that we all have the ability to do that. We all have the ability